How does the metaphysics work?
So if I was basically to say kind of like, how does the metaphysics work? Well, there's these two sort of orienting bases, one of which is foundational triplication, which is the idea that every domain, and by domain we mean a study of a particular body of knowledge or a particular realm in which we can know something. So, for example, mathematics and each sub branch of mathematics might be thought of as a domain. The world as we know it, in the sense of physicality, can be thought of as a domain, but it also can be thought of the world of finance or the world of some social process, like the internet, for example, can be thought of as a realm of activity. And so, in a sense, when we look at the kinds of concepts associated with domains, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of stuff in a domain, and we kind of do a sort of analysis by which the terms or the dependencies between those things in the domain, if we were to define them, have a kind of ordering. Like some things are more fundamental in a sense that they provide the basis for lots of other ones. So if we do a sort of a network analysis on all of the relationships that comprise a domain, and we do essentially a kind of topological sort on that, that we can effectively discover what are the more fundamental concepts of that domain. So the first major claim of the metaphysics is that these that at the root of that topological sort, the most fundamental concepts, that there will always be three, and that the other concepts of the domain effectively are built upon or constructed out of or are superpositions of those three concepts. And so this is the notion of foundational triplication. The second major thing that is sort of the difference of how this metaphysics is constructed is this notion of type isomorphism, which is to say that once you've recognized that all of the different domains have these three concepts at the bottom, that we can essentially align the structure of the basis of each domain with another. In other words, that each set of three concepts of the fundamental part of a domain effectively have correspondence to one another, that the pattern of their relationships is the same pattern. And so when we're looking at the axioms and the modalities are themselves those three concepts. And the axioms are a statement of the relationship of those concepts, is essentially a statement of that pattern of relationships. So in effect, the third major claim of the metaphysics is that the axioms and the modalities allow us to essentially understand the structure of each domain once we have essentially identified what are those fundamental concepts, that we can use the understanding of one domain that we know well to gain an understanding of other domains that we don't yet know well. And so this is one of the reasons why the metaphysics has a lot of utility. And so we talked about the notion of abstraction, and basically saying that in the same way that numbers are abstract from physicality, that the number two or the number five or number eight or whatever can represent the physical instance of that number of items, that there isn't any direct requirement that you have a physical embodiment for the abstract concept of a number. In this sort of same way, we can say that the concepts that are the modalities, or the concepts that are the axioms, themselves don't have a requirement to be instantiated with any specific domain or any specific language, but they do in fact end up being instantiated with them the same way that numbers can be instantiated within objects. One of the things that comes out of this study is that there's no such thing as a domain which contains all other domains. It's a bit like saying there's no language which is essentially the language, or the root language out of which all the languages come. Now, in actual linguistics, there may be claims like that, but fundamentally, there's no requirement that there be a super language that is the basis of all other languages. Some people think mathematics would be that language, but there's no particular reason to assume that any version of mathematics is more primal or less so than others, other than things that essentially might have to do with conventions or particular orientations that allow us to understand some things in a more general way. But in effect, one of the ideas that comes out of both mathematics and of the metaphysics is that you don't have a single core basis that would effectively be both consistent and complete. So in effect, the metaphysics is a kind of it's a set of ideas that describes the foundations of domains very well, but it doesn't make any assumption that it can be complete, i.e., that it's going to describe all of the phenomena in a domain. The more you remove yourself away from the core of the structure of the domain, then the less likely it's going to be that metaphysical truths are going to be relevant. As you get less abstract or more concrete in a sense, in the ordinary see and touch sort of way.